Hey everybody, welcome to the Forest School Podcast. This podcast is all about exploring the fascinating world of forest school education and sharing our evolving perspectives on this ever-changing field. We want to take a moment at the beginning of this episode to thank you, our dedicated listeners, for joining us. But before we dive into this episode, we'd like to address something important. If you're just joining us, or if you've been with us since the beginning, you may have noticed that some of our earlier episodes sound a bit different. The Forest School Podcast began as our own personal journey through the world of education, and those early episodes reflect a time when we were still learning the ropes. While we're proud of our growth and progress through the years, it's essential to acknowledge that those early episodes may not meet the technical and content quality standards of our more recent episodes. Education is a field that's constantly evolving, and so are our views and insights. Our early episodes served as a public diary of our learning journey, complete with all the mistakes and learning experiences that came with it. We believe that it's essential to keep these episodes available for posterity as they remind us how far we've come. However, if you're here for the most up-to-date discussions on education and our best quality recordings, we'd encourage you to explore our more recent episodes. Our views have evolved, our production quality's improved, and we're excited to share our current perspectives and knowledge with you. So, whether you're here to trace our journey from the beginning, or you're seeking the latest insights into education, we're thrilled to have you along for the ride. Thank you very much for being part of the Forest School community. Let's embark on this journey together.
Then you can fully absorb to the same music. Completely let the land support you.
Right. You didn't start yet.
Am I? Okay. Hi. We're back here with the Forest School Podcast, and I'm Gemma.
And I'm Lewis.
And today we have a special guest.
Hey, and I'm Larissa.
Larissa has come to join us, and we're going to be talking about music today and its role in Forest School. So I guess we can start off talking about,
Should we just say what we do on a general thing, and then we can talk about
how we use music in our sessions. So we have music every session, usually at the end.
Let's say we do every toddler session, but
sometimes with
the older children,
ones.
it's sometimes less.
Yeah.
It's less structured, isn't it? They're easier to get into a game. They can last for longer, whereas so we do every toddler session.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say we do every session.
Although I try to. So if we've got older children here all day, then I often, just in the afternoon, there's often a kind of
the lull.
There's a bit of a lull. That kind of exactly.
Letting everything digest.
Yeah.
It's a nice time to take something away and play, isn't it?
Yeah, and I wouldn't do a kind of structured everyone sit down and have a sing along. I would take the ukulele to them and just play.
Start doing something.
And some of them do gather around.
Yeah.
But the toddler sessions is sort of, we use
they're more
ukuleles and
structures,
drums, don't we?
Yeah, they're the songs that you kind of join in with. The like animal noise ones, or the like we did.
And
Little
actions.
Bird.
Yeah. Do you use music every time, do you think?
No, definitely not every time. Working with primary school age children primarily, rather than the toddlers. So sometimes it's because the children have wanted to do it, because they picked up some sticks and started tapping them, and then something's come from that, and they're like, oh, we want to make something more, and then the next week we'll set up with whatever we can do. I will normally, if I don't do a poem or a story, it's a song or music. So actually I guess I probably nearly always do a bit of music, but it's not necessarily with the children.
And I wonder why that is. Why, I mean, because there's nothing that says that Forest School has to have or should have music. I haven't read much about it, actually.
For me, when I'm in the woods, I make music. So that's what I do when I'm here. So it's like you sit down, you have a cup of tea, you play.
And
so I think that's just because it's normal for me, I bring it in.
I do a lot of they're not specific like journeying songs, but our sight. If the kids are taking you to, like, if they come up here and they're like, oh, can you bring the saw down to the treehouse, and they'll walk with me, and kids walk slow, I quite often will either hum something or be singing something to myself, because it fills the time more so than, because I think especially for some children, if they're walking next to an adult, there's a weird pressure to like fill a conversation. But if one of you is just, if you're just singing
or whistling,
then and it lets everybody know where I am, which has I think an added bonus of like, it's a gentler way, isn't it? Like you were saying earlier, than having a whistle or having a like, come on, we're here, you know, we're doing whatever.
If you just
vaguely hear, or a call, or like, if you can vaguely hear, like if I can hear Gemma down at the bottom with the ukulele, I know she's down there, I don't have to check and do a howl and go, Gemma, are you down? Like, you know.
Which is really disruptive and disturbing, isn't it? Yeah.
And it's just kind of, fills that void of a space.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. Do you think it has a role with the older children?
I think it does. I think there's something about like it fits into that kind of, I guess, category of, or that bit of time in the session which is quite reflective and is quite communal, and it's about togetherness, isn't it? So a group of any age might be off doing lots of different things during that session, and whether it is, and like you're saying, I either do a story or a poem or a song. I'd say we probably do the similar kind of thing, like with the home ed group. That would usually be a story or a song, and sometimes we'll give them that choice and say, which would you like to do? And I guess it is about, it's a very, even if they're just listening, even if it's just you making the music, that is a shared communal moment where we've all been off, and actually that is our time to then go, we're together again now, this is a moment that we share. But not necessarily very close physically together, because sometimes they can come back and we can be singing here and there'll be kids on the you know, they can be,
but they're still, if they can hear it, they're still
then they're part of that. You're in that sound bubble, aren't you? And that's quite nice, because it's less, I think, maybe compared to a story, if someone was telling a story and you could sort of hear it, you'd be straining and you'd kind of miss it and you wouldn't quite get the same experience, but you could be far enough away to catch little refrains of music,
and it can just float over you. And if you're interested, it draws you in, and if you want to carry on playing, you can carry on.
It's very interesting doing it with school age groups, where it's obviously very different for them than for some schools. Some schools might make music all the time, I guess, in different ways, but some of the schools that we've worked with, I think the singing they're used to is assembly singing, and that's it.
That's a very good point.
And you stand up and you sing.
And it's almost not for pleasure, is it?
No,
it's
exactly.
not singing for pleasure or making music for pleasure. It's with a performance, or it's, you know, the head teacher is
expecting something. So often with groups I've worked with, you start, go, oh, I want to do some singing now, and some of them will just look, and even children that come here that have been at school, they just look like, oh, I just don't sing, like this is the time where I just close my mouth.
I can't sing,
and I don't want
confident enough to sing.
And actually it's a different type of music making in the forest, isn't it? It's very, you put in whatever you want to put in, you don't, nobody has to do anything. And
it could just be body percussion and mucking around.
And sometimes that's, I mean, we've said before, haven't we, about how like modelling is one of the most important things in a forest school session, and I think that's where we have a bit of an advantage with there being two of us, in that one of us can almost be this, like you were saying, like the straight man, and I am going to sing and I'm going to do this, and the other one can sing it a little bit out of tune, or make bird noises, or do you can show that it's okay. It
doesn't have to be this set,
whereas I'm comparing it now to a hymn, which is we all sing this, and if you come in a beat too early, everybody looks at you, or doesn't,
or you try and harmonise with it.
It's very and I think the choice of instrument makes a big difference.
It sounds like we're talking about freedom, doesn't it? Instead of prescriptive, this is how it's done, and you've got to do it the right way. It's like organic and fun, and you can embellish it and go where you want.
And having songs that you can, like you're saying, with that freedom of saying songs that you can play on a ukulele, or you can just do with a drum, or you can just bang a stick against a tree, and not needing, this has to have a melody part and a bass part and a rhythm. It's kind of like, you can just make this up, can't you? Like, drop a pine cone, that'll work, and then you can do it wherever.
New instrument, drop a pine cone.
Dropping a pine. We did, Gemma,
drop it onto what?
Well, Gemma set up her own little pots and pans thing when we had the snow and it was all melting off the roof of the cabin. and so it was all this one line.
Snow
And so
melt.
she put different pans at different heights.
It was like
And
a snow melt orchestra.
yeah, and it was just plink plonk, plink plonk, plink plonk, plonk. And it was a bit hypnotic, wasn't it? You
Yeah.
couldn't hear it from any distance, but when you got close, it suddenly was a bit. It was like being in a room of 1,000 clocks.
Yeah.
You know, just all ticking and just. Yeah, it was nice.
I think my favourite song that we do with toddlers is a song. I must remember her name. It's
Ella-
called "Show
not Ella
Me."
Jenkins?
Ella Jenkins. Yes. Oh, wonders. And the children take part in the action. So you say, "Show me your," and you say, "What should we do? Clapping or marching?" And we've done that song so many times now that the actions
can
that they choose are like,
self-generate,
"Let's just
yeah.
do this."
Insane.
Yeah, and so it ends up with running, and
Oh,
so
that was incredible.
and the group at the beginning would be just like all very politely sitting and clapping, and the parents going, "Come on, let's all clap," And
Because that's what the
now-
parents think.
Yeah,
is
it's
perfect.
like,
Because that's
you
a
know,
normal
it's
toddler
toddler
group,
group.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And now it is "Show me your running," and they are
Gone.
absolutely running in every direction. And some of the parents are starting to do it
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
and they're just running around like absolute, and they just like own it, you know. We
Yeah.
just happen to be
Excitement,
playing
enjoyment,
it, and they're just
yeah.
Yeah.
Going
And then
for it.
those things are about finding. So you know, like we were always saying, forest school is about meeting the kids where they are, and then taking them a little bit further.
Yeah.
And I mean, so we do in that song, you do running, but we also occasionally do dancing, which is such a massive self-esteem leap to get up and dance in front of a group of other, even just the adults. Well, especially the adults actually.
Yeah.
Whereas running.
You-
You know, you feel confident. You're like, I know how to run. I can run.
Yeah,
That's
it's
not going to be an
physically
issue.
similar, but nobody's going to kind of like judge you for
Yeah.
running.
Whereas suddenly dancing is like,
Yeah.
whoa, I can't
Yeah.
do. And you know,
We take so much cultural baggage that stops us from just naturally doing this
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
we?
and the
It's
ones
just-
that have the most fun are the parents who
Get
make
down.
eye contact with their own kid, and they're like, none of you exist.
Yeah.
I'm dancing with my kid right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And that's, you know,
Yeah.
that's the freedom
Yeah.
bit, isn't
Yeah.
it? Should we have a look at some instruments? Should we talk about what instruments we use?
Yeah.
Larissa's got lots of magical instruments.
I
Which
have.
we haven't even opened yet, so
Which
we haven't seen
haven't
them.
opened.
Should we go one for one? So if you tell one, and then we'll talk about something that
Yeah.
we use here.
Yeah. So I have. This is my first one. So this is a Native American style flute. So it's double chambered here and then here. So this is very important. It's not just for decoration.
There's a sort of like handle thing above the mouthpiece, is what
Yeah.
Larissa's
Yeah.
pointing at right now.
Yeah.
It looks like a little bird sat on.
It is
On
a
the
bird.
pipe, it is a
yeah.
What's it made of?
This is silver birch, but it's spalted, so rotting
yeah.
for those who know this. And this is from Dartmoor. So if I play this, and we've been making elder whistles or something like that,
Okay,
then
nice.
it's like, I want to make one of those. All of
Yeah.
a sudden, you have whistles that they're drilling holes into
Yeah.
and things as
Yeah.
well.
Go on then, give us a.
Yeah, give us a little.
Really?
Beautiful,
That's so nice.
lovely sound. for
It's
Alice.
so like fluid
Yeah.
that you don't get with a lot of instruments. Almost wind instruments, I think, sound very binary, don't they? You've pressed your finger down, or you
Yeah.
haven't.
Yeah.
That's the difference with this, because you're blowing into here, but then the air revolves around in the top chamber, and
To come out one chamber and into the other.
comes out that one, and it's only a millimetre deep, this little channel here, and then it's cut and the fipple's here, so the breathiness comes from this in here,
Top
and then it
chamber.
goes back down. But that's what makes it sound very different from
Yeah.
any other one.
And I guess that's one thing to think about, isn't it? When you're thinking about instruments to choose to take to forest school,
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is, does that instrument speak in some way to you? Because it's a bit like storytelling, isn't it? Like it's
Yeah.
got to be your story, your
Yeah.
instrument
Yeah.
to an extent.
Yeah.
But also there's that element of anything that you play with your mouth you've taken one of your communication tools away. Potentially, if you're playing with your mouth and using your hands, you have then only eye contact and body language to communicate.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely
compared
right.
to, say, something like
But I would say instead of taking it away, I've just changed my voice. So this is my musical voice.
Whoa.
It's a very different step, and I personally feel more myself when I'm playing. So it's a really big thing for me. It was a really big thing for me to first start playing in public, because I'd played so long by myself that it was my thing, and then to do it to other people was a big deal. But then I found other people like it, and I'm like, I can share it and make other people love it too.
Should we talk about one of ours?
Yeah.
We mostly heavily ukulele here, aren't we?
Yep.
But I think that's more for portability.
Well, partly also because I used to play trumpet and cornet, but no more, and that'll probably be a little bit loud in the woods. Our neighbours are already like annoyed that we're here. So that's my instrument that I played before I did forest school.
And a ukulele's got I think it's got like a sweet tone to it, doesn't it?
And it's
it sounds very child friendly.
Yeah.
It sounds a bit jovial.
Yeah.
I think if we came in with a bassoon, it would be a harder sell.
Yeah.
Something low and thick, and do you know what I mean? There's that timbre to consider, isn't there?
Yeah. And it doesn't matter as well that they want to have a go.
Yeah.
And it is easy for them to make a sound on a ukulele. Not necessarily play chords, but like at the end today, they gather round, the last song is played, and they always want to just have a little
I had to fight like 4 of them off today. Tell me that you saw.
That's why they're thing off your legs as you walked away.
But that's the thing, isn't it? With the drum, they are so like, yes, I want to do it. I want to do it.
How natural is that?
It is,
How natural is that?
And that's
you hear it and you want to do it.
And I sometimes struggle with that thing of, do I just go, they're so interested, let's let them keep going, at the expense of
the song,
I can't do anything,
the rest of the group
music,
expecting and wanting to join in with the music, and then
especially doing the rhythm, because some of the songs that we do without a rhythm are quite difficult for some of the parents to follow. So if I'm not playing a strong beat, there can be a bit of a like, where is this? What's going on? But then we've tried before, haven't we? Me having a drum and giving the kids drums, and they've got no volume control. So I'm trying to play nicely. I'm playing nicely with Gemma, and they're just going like, whatever we're doing. It's not a rhythm. That's not.
But is that they just need more playtime and experience with the drum?
And we have done
trying to work together.
So we have done that before, where
we've just played with drums. It's been like drum playtime rather than it's But then it's just time, isn't it? It's like all these things that the kids want to do, and then But
that, I think some adults, when we got all the drums up, so we got like 15 drums.
I've seen them. I'm excited.
But it would be like you were saying, that freedom element of it. It would take under 2 minutes for some of the parents to be going, shh, no, listen, because Lucy's going to show us what to do. And I kind of I wouldn't have said, I'm going to show you what to do. But it's that expectation of like, we are now having a drum lesson.
Something official.
Or he will show, there's going to be some technique input. It's a drum. Aside from like, don't cover the bit where the sound comes out. I don't really feel like I need to tell. I could tell. I used to teach djembe, so like I could go further. But
it's curious, isn't it? Because if you give a child a stick, the parent's not going to say, "We'll wait and find out what we're supposed to do with the stick."
Some of them would.
That's heartbreaking.
But
there's a reverence around instruments which is quite natural, I think, especially if it's not yours and you don't know how to use it, and you'll think, oh, I don't know if I might break it, or and some people are very reverent, aren't they? Like some people weren't you saying about the drum teacher who were like, for the first few weeks we're not going to touch the drum, we're just going to look at the drum and I will talk to you about the drum. And so I think we've all heard tell of somebody like that, so that reverence is quite natural, I guess, culturally.
And I guess maybe it's that unknown financial value of it. Aside from any sentimental value, you see a hand carved djembe and you go, that's probably quite expensive. And then almost that's a weird idea, isn't it, that expensive things shouldn't be for children. That there's almost that balance of either it's expensive and children don't play with it, or it's cheap and children are allowed to play with it and break it. And sometimes there are examples where it's like, well, okay, they are reasonably expensive drums, but that's what they're for.
They're there
for,
to be used.
They're not for ignoring.
Yeah.
What else have we got? Can we have another?
Well, I have a drum as well,
Can we have a
but
look at the
not
drum?
djembe. So it's a frame drum.
Okay, so it's like it's almost like a tambourine, but it's tambourine shaped, isn't it?
Yes,
but without
tambourine shaped. Yeah.
Is it made entirely of hide, the back bit? So there's a wooden frame, and then there's a kind of circle
Yeah,
in the middle.
in this circle here there is a metal ring
Okay.
to be able to tension it on. So this is Dartmoor red deer skin.
Oh, did you make this?
I made this,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
with help.
Yeah.
With a lot of help. It's actually here. Can you hear that? Then?
yeah, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
picked up my voice. Wants to be played. And there's a bit of Dartmoor pony skin there as well. So yeah,
Go on then. Can we hear
this
it?
is well. You've got anything and everything.
It's very.
on this.
I'm going to say reverberant. I'm
Yes,
going to make
it
up that
is.
word.
Reverberant.
Yeah, the slightest vibration it seems to be picking up and
Yeah,
kind of amplifying.
yeah.
it.
It's in exactly its right environment, because making a drum like this, you obviously start with a completely wet soaked skin.
Yeah.
So you dry it where you want to be playing it. So
Oh,
very
okay,
slowly
so
over
acclimatise.
days where So
Yeah.
if you're going to play it in a hot climate or dry climate or damp, slightly chilly woodland. So you've got. And you can get.
There's such a big sound from such a small.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not small, but it's shallow, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And that's almost.
Really shallow. And it's very hardy. So as long as the kids aren't hitting it with the end of a stick, I mean, it has taken quite a bit of a battering, but they can really go for it. And yesterday I had a couple of kids a couple of girls who maybe a year ago, year 5-ish, they'd been really shy about picking anything up, and I was doing something else with another group yesterday afternoon, and I could hear the drum, and I looked up, and one's whacking away to her heart's content, and the other's dancing like this, and I was just like, it's like soul food. It's just like, yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So no structure to it. It's there. You've been introduced to it. You know what you're allowed to do with it, and they went for it.
But isn't it funny how some children have that reticence? Because I did something in a school we did apples. Apple.
Oh, what is it?
You know, apple trees. What's the word? Where you
Apple bobbing?
Okay. No, okay. So feeding the apple trees cider.
Oh, wassailing. Yeah.
Yes. So had a wassail.
Yeah.
And didn't have any special drums, but had loads of pots and pans and sticks and buckets.
Yeah.
And I showed them some wassail songs lyrics and said, I don't know the tune to these. But here we go, and look, I just left them around. So we talked about what a wassail was at the beginning, and I said, so at the end we'll make some apple. We made some like warm apple tea basically, and some toast. And so at the end, just before we go in for the last few minutes, we'll do the wassail. If you want to practice and do something and create something cool, if you don't want to, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And
freedom.
Yeah, and some of the children were like, right, come on, get all the pots and pans, and some were like, were frightened of just banging a saucepan. They just were sort of a bit shy and a bit like, it was really interesting that some of them, and I guess it's noise, isn't it? It's look at me, I'm making this loud noise. It's always a performance, even if you're just doing it by yourself.
Present. If you're making a big noise, you're very present. You're definitely in the space and taking up space, and some kids
just don't want to be there.
Yeah. But then some very introverted kids, given time and the opportunity, will
experiment with it.
And how fantastic is that?
Yeah.
To then see them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. What's this thing here with all these bits
so this is I've been trying to develop a repertoire of instruments. So you've got something you can blow, you've got something you can hit. We've been making guitars this week, which has been interesting. But so this is something that you can
shaker,
rattle. Yeah, so shaker with added embellishments.
Wow.
So
what's this made of? The top bit?
That's the pony skin.
Wow.
Yeah.
And kind of little bits of twigs drilled.
In fact, these three...
they're quite a good little...
Yeah, they're absolutely great. These were given to me by a child last summer as a necklace, and I love them, so they became the base of my rattle.
Wow. shaker. And look at that.
Sorry,
Beautiful.
I was looking for, because I was trying to think the other instrument that we sometimes use is my Cascas.
Oh yeah.
I can't find them in there, so what I'll do
What
is
is
I've got a pair at home, so I'll layer it in on the sound. But it's 2 hardened seed pods connected by like a small piece of, it looks like fabric, but it's
That
t-shirt,
flick round.
and it flicks
Yes,
round
I
and
know
you knock
them.
it round
Yeah,
your 2
yeah,
hands,
yeah.
and actually,
My son's got one.
yeah, and it just makes the kind of
Yeah.
and it's quite, for a one-handed instrument,
It's got a lot.
it's got a lot of feeling with it, and a bit like I was saying earlier with the communication thing and like not cutting things off, because it's one hand and it's small. It's not only giving you a shaker and a beat, but you've got another hand free to
Still
do other things and kind
you've
of
still got your
and you've still got your
Yeah.
voice and you've still got everything else, and I quite like it as a, and it's very portable. Like normally it's in my pocket somewhere and I sound like I'm walking around with a bag of rice.
Yeah.
But like it's a I really like it as a bit like we were saying earlier about walking around and making songs. I really like it as a signalling thing. So sometimes I'll just sit there and start clacking it together around the circle, and
It's like an
it
invitation.
will come and it will bring people, but it's
Yeah.
not as intrusive as, it's almost a spectrum, isn't it? So playing 2 ukuleles is one end of, not one end, but it's higher up on that spectrum of
Yeah.
music is happening now, because
Yes.
you're harder
Yes.
to
It's got
escape. Whereas
something.
Yeah.
a little, you know,
Yeah.
tappity tap is kind of like, oh, just piques your interest, just, you know, ears perk up and like, oh, maybe we can go and join in with that
Yeah.
and do whatever.
Yeah.
It's quite a nice thing.
But we haven't talked about like the most basic things, which is what the kids would be doing anyway, isn't it? Which is
Non-man-made
Yeah.
instruments.
Yeah.
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 and
Very
tuning in. And when we started here, we were just looking up, weren't we? Because it's
Yeah.
a fantastic view up there, and that whole thing of you stop doing and you start listening, and then you really notice when someone
Yeah.
walks up behind you, and it's the music that's here in the woods anyway,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
I went on an amazing workshop with the Knee High Theatre Company about making theatre with young people, and so it was essentially storytelling and creating stories. And one of the most amazing things that we did was closed our eyes, and one person would make a sound just like you have.
Yep.
And yeah, what do you see when you hear? And so just one sound after another creates a story in your head, and it's really nice, especially if your eyes are closed.
Were you then sharing the story,
Yes.
or just keeping it?
Yeah, we did show, you know, it was like, what was happening, and I can still remember the
Yeah.
film I saw in my head while someone was ripping up
Of what
newspaper
that's what.
behind me. I mean, how amazing is that your brain has that relationship with sound?
But cutting out the other sensory input, isn't
Yes.
it? And really
Yeah.
just tuning in.
And sometimes that's like we teach children the sort of bird songs with. You've almost got to put a narrative. You don't have to, but it helps to put a narrative on it or put words on it. Of
You said about the blackbird earlier, didn't you?
Yeah.
which makes it much easier to pick out.
Uh-huh.
And so that's a big element of kind of music in forest school, isn't it? Of listening to those bird songs and interpreting them, and
Yeah.
it's always very interesting hearing other people who've made up their own words for the bird songs. So you know, like you go, what's like a blue tit. You know, we go, it goes me 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 me, like a kid going me 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 me.
Yeah.
But then to someone else that could be a completely different thing, and we've put that whole story around it of a kid, and they're excited, they got their hand up and all that stuff, and so I quite like that part of it.
That's how loads of our birds were named, though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because they had a characteristic that created a story, and
Yeah.
the robin redbreast was actually, robin was the name.
It's the Christian name, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Like
and
jackdaw.
redbreast was the name
Yeah.
of the bird.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jackdaw and things.
Jenny Wren,
Yeah.
Tomtit.
We kind of left.
Well, let's leave it on Tomtit, shall we? That can be the end.
Yeah.
Okay. Magic.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Larissa.